Hey, how's it going, folks? And welcome back to another awesome episode of GSTalks. I'm your host, Chris, and today's topic is how much is too much for a film franchise. So today I'm going to be sitting down with the guys, Scott once again, and a special guest who I won't spoil until we actually get to the podcast itself. But I will be asking the questions of what are some of their favorite franchises and some of their not so favorites, and what Hollywood can do to change the franchises. Kind of like how James Bond has been kind of going, good, bad, and they've been going, 50 years strong? Same thing can be said about Fast and Furious, probably something like Ice Age, stuff like that, Star Wars maybe. But we'll get into that as soon as the podcast starts. So sit back, relax, have a cold one, and hey, make sure you enjoy yourself. Here we go. Hey, what is up, people of the internet? It's your host, Chris of GSTalks. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. And Squat, also welcome back. Say hello, Scott.
Called me Squat.
Guys.
Well, that's, I guess, an intro. It's me. I'm back. Chris hasn't killed me yet or said you're fired, so I'm here.
Hey, how you liking the new digs?
I'm loving the new setup. It's kind of like a crossbreed of like an actual like nighttime studio set, and it's also a little bit of that double toasted name drop, and it's kind of like Buffalo Bill's lair. I'm digging it.
Absolutely. And ladies and gentlemen, we have a special guest with here, a third member. A welcoming back. Please give a warm welcome back. It's been long overdue since anyone on YouTube has probably seen or heard of him. Mr. Benjamin Lord!
Hey, everyone. Hope you're as beautiful as I remember you.
And he's most known for playing Sherlock Holmes the first time around.
Oh, clearly.
Oh, thank you for doing the line.
Indeed. So, Ben, how you been, man?
Oh, just living life, finish school, find a job, trying to get back in the swing of things. Really glad to see what we've made out of GS and Monster Productions. Everything is looking great, you guys. I'm glad it evolved while I was gone.
And also, remember back in the day when it would be like, hey, Ben, I really want to film something. Oh, what's the story? It's kind of a story, but can you ask your mom if you can come over?
Yeah, it was great. If we could have had alcohol when we were 16, the stories would have been much more fun.
Oh, my God, but could you imagine? I mean, look at our stories without alcohol.
To be
We made Unstoppable.
To be very fair, I think our acting would have been a lot better if we were drunk when we were, 18.
I just want to point out that David played a weird semi-Russian guy that would kill people with a log, okay? That was without alcohol.
Also, the third bro code, you were actually drinking that day. I remember that.
And see, that was probably our best bro code.
It was probably our best bro code. You're right. I was staying sober, unfortunately.
Maybe we just need to be drunk when we're writing things. That seems to be where it comes from. There's the banter and the ad-libbing.
So folks, we're talking about our product on Monster Productions 27. That's Monster Productions with the 27 afterwards. Scott, plug it.
Monster Productions 27. Right now, our claim to fame is the Holmes University series. We also have our own cinematic universe of sorts, which we are developing some more stuff for. That's kind of as we have the time, but, that's kind of our claim to fame. But we like to make cinematic stories for no budget.
Registered trademark of Scott Acorn Industries. Please, anything you take from these videos, please copyright properly.
That's right. And speaking of, how's the... I know the name's changing soon. Our whole future is about to change for the business aspect.
We are entering a phase 2, basically, of an era. We are going to be changing our name. We've filed the paperwork. We are going to have a new production company name because Monster Productions was taken by some guy who has an event planning thing out of like Minnesota. So if you're listening, thanks.
Minnesota.
But what I have to say is, we are going to be changing. We will announce the name soon, but we are going to step it up with the name announcement, too. We are going to... Essentially, all of our quality is going up quite a bit.
And it can only go up from here. Moving up in the world, as I would usually say to Scott.
And our debut of the new production company will be Holmes University 4 Origins of the Fall, not starring Benjamin Lord as Sherlock Holmes, but it is still a grandiose adventure starring Chris, our host.
Hey.
And many, many others. It's kind of an ensemble movie.
Indeed. All right. Well, I gathered you guys here today because I know this is going to be a good topic. How much is too much for a film franchise.
Oh, this is gonna get heated.
Now, starting with Ben, what are some of your favorite franchises?
I gotta say, I was always really, really big in anime. Grew up on Pokemon, grew up on Digimon, grew up on the Dragon Ball Z, and I gotta say, their movies are great. You gotta look at also the One Piece movies, the Naruto movies, and really anything Japan rolls out, let's face it, they've been using the same ideas since the early 80s, and they, in my opinion, are still strong.
Which I want to talk to you about a franchise later that I just finished watching last night that was incredible, but I'll get to that later. So I agree with you on Japan and their franchising.
Moving on to Scott, some of your favorite franchises?
All right, so it's a brand new one, but I got to name drop the Cloverfield franchise. Then, of course, Die Hard. Taken, which Taken is a franchise I love, but it also has some guilty pleasure elements. But I also have to talk about Rambo as well. That one is very, very precious to me. As all these guys know, action movies really shaped how I grew up as a kid. Alien, of course, as well. So it really became franchises have kind of shaped who I am, and that's what kind of made me different when I went to film school.
Indeed. Some of my favorite franchises, obviously, being Star Wars. I know we'll get to more to that a little bit later, Scott. I know you have something to say about that. Star Wars, I like the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe to this point. I'm not disappointed. I know, again, Scott, you're very different about that.
You and me got a little heated last time.
That. What's that, Ben?
I have a really good input on the Marvel thing, but we can get to that later.
Okay. Also, I didn't think this till now. The Rocky franchise. I really love the Rocky franchise, especially with the newest Apollo movie. Oh my gosh, I thought that was great. I really thought it was great. Ben, go ahead.
Great movie. I don't feel it really plays to what Rocky was. Back in the day, they kind of just input his character and go, look, it's a new Rocky, but it's not Rocky. But if Sylvester Stallone had not been there, it still would have been a very powerful movie. And I feel it was kind of tacky that they were just trying to ride on the coattails of Rocky when this movie was already amazing.
Interesting.
I still think that they should have ended it with Rocky Balboa. That is the definition of a perfect send-off. So I feel like seeing Rocky after Rocky Balboa almost demotes the powerful
I slightly
message
agree.
that...
Trust me, I agree too. And I think what I hope they do with Apollo 2... See what I did there? Is that I don't know if they can call it Apollo 2, but what I hope is that they.
I also want to go on record. I'm not crapping on Creed. I just feel that the Rocky franchise, even though Creed, it's still in that same universe, so I still have to count it. I have a hard time saying that should have been, and I was actually championing it at first, but that's because I thought it was more like an Apollo Creed origin story. When they first announced it, they said they were going to make an Apollo Creed movie.
Right.
So I was like, oh, that's fantastic, because then you can do more of that Rocky universe without, like he said, riding the coattails of Rocky Balboa.
Well, the biggest thing, too, is I was reading a few articles about what Sylvester was going through at the time, and they really beat the loss of his son into him into going to this movie. The entirety of him doing this was he didn't want to do it, and then he kind of got roped into it by the illusion that Apollo was the replacement for the son he lost in real life. It was a very upsetting thing for me when I read that.
Yeah.
And so this kind of goes on topic because Rocky is 7 films deep now, technically.
I think more than that, isn't it?
No,
definitely.
Rocky 5, then Balboa, and then Creed technically is Rocky 7.
I guess so, yeah.
If you really see it that way. That's the way I see it. I don't know if that's... I guess Creed is more than a reboot than anything else. Not really,
actually,
though. It's a continuation, but it's just a different
There's a
perspective.
term I coined that I don't know if someone actually has it out there, but it's called... I call it a sequel boot, where it's a reboot in a way where you're reimagining something, but it's still in the same continuum, but it doesn't need the other ones.
Sequel boot. Copyright Scotty Gooder Industries.
There we go.
So this is good. I'm glad we're talking about this. And if I could continue on without staying too much on Creed.
Yeah.
Some of my other favorite franchises, obviously, this is Star Trek. And unfortunately, we had the passing of...
Anton Yelkin, which still gets me. I mean... It's one of those things that, from what they can tell, as I have to say, like my PSA, I guess, right here, is make sure your parking brake is on if you're going to get out of your vehicle, because he was impaled on his mailbox. From what they know, he didn't put the parking brake on, just ran back to check something real fast and got hit. It's a true shame, because he's only a couple years older than us, and he had such an illustrious and amazing career. He made Terminator Salvation bearable.
Indeed. So, go ahead. What?
Never saw that. Another franchise I think could
I
die.
think that staying on topic.
Gonna
but rest
say.
in peace, buddy. We miss you, and may you rest.
He was also, I want to say, it hit me a little bit more on a personal note. Normally, as Chris knows, celebrity deaths don't normally faze me. This was a guy that was on my list of people that I said that one day it would be a dream come true to direct. Because as you guys know, I direct stuff. I've always wanted to bring Anton Yelkin in. I've always wanted to work with that man. And I will never get that opportunity now, and I probably should have, because of how young he is.
Right, and I can totally see him in some of our stuff. Absolutely,
he would. He would do a lot of low budget stuff too. So it hit me in a place where I realized that was someone that I will never get to work with, like I've always wanted.
All right, well, rest in peace, buddy. Moving along, we talked about franchises we like. Now, starting with Ben, franchises you don't like.
All right, I gotta say, I cannot stand the Planet of the Apes franchise.
Oh.
Mostly because I have only seen one. It was the one that was released late 90s, early 2000.
The Mark Wahlberg one?
Yeah, the Mark
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well,
That one's not connected to the newer ones, is it?
No.
Okay.
and see, that's the thing I have an issue with that franchise is similar to Rocky. It's riding the coattails of what came before it. And if you haven't seen the originals, which I highly suggest...
The original Planet of the Apes is a very powerful movie.
It is, and it deals with a lot of issues that were with the actual time, and with everything they're doing now, it's just it became a statement that turned into an action movie that
you say action movie, but I've seen both of the newer ones, and the first one I didn't like. The newer one.
Oh, you didn't like Rise of the Planet of the Apes?
I didn't like Rise of the Planet of the
I
Apes.
like that one, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. As much as Matt Reeves is one of my favorite directors, like lately. Let Me In is one of the best movies that has come out in terms of remakes. But I have to say, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes to me was just not a good movie. And like you said, that's what I figured you were talking about. It was a generic sci-fi movie. Whereas Rise of the Planet of the Apes was almost like becoming like, at what point is something basically human? And that we have to treat it as such. And how would people react?
Oh, well, I got to be honest here because we are doing the podcast, and I don't want to lie to our viewers. I have not seen them. The reason I have such an issue with them is I've only seen what were put into the adverts, and everything I've seen is, oh, they took this movie I love and turned it into something I could watch, like Fast and the Furious. Another franchise I think could die.
I agree on that one. That one needs to die.
I slightly agree. I think they're going on too long because, unfortunately, Paul Walker had
Should
passed
have
away.
ended it.
They should have ended it at 7. I absolutely agree. And I love the franchise. I grew up with the franchise. That's why I have a special attachment to the franchise.
Many people may know, many may not. I have always hated that franchise, but I will get onto something later, and I will give you credit.
All right.
What was the other one I was talking about earlier before we started podcasting?
You said Planet of the Apes. You also said, what did you say? I don't remember.
Oh, it's gonna bother me the rest of the show now if we don't
write
remember.
It down. I should have wrote it down. We'll come back to it.
Oh, Sharknado.
Oh, Sharknado.
Yes,
Okay.
we will
Yes,
have
okay. I
words with
agree.
Later.
No. The pure awesomeness that was Sharknado 1 is one of those guilty pleasure movies you watch, and then when they keep doing
There's
it,
a poster of it in my room.
I know there is. But after you watch 1 and then you watch 2, and then out of nowhere I see on my random torrent site in India that there's a Sharknado 7.
No, there isn't. There only are up to 4.
Still,
I think you're thinking of Tremors.
probably Tremors.
Oh, Tremors is something that needs to go.
Yes.
I mean, those B-rated films, they're great. 1, 2, maybe. And then at that point, you need to stop making your franchise and do it like Sharknado versus Cybershark. I'd watch that.
Have you watched Sharknado 3, though?
I refuse to watch anything that
Okay,
I could.
Okay, hey, we're getting.
No, I just have to say one thing. You like the idea of Sharknado versus Cyber Shark.
Yes.
Sharknado 3, they go into outer space. The main character from Sharknado 1 gets a laser chainsaw and fights a megalodon. So
You lost me in outer space.
I'm just saying.
Okay, let me make a tangent. Let me rephrase what I was saying.
Please do.
I don't think Sharknado should die as a franchise. I think it should be converted into a sci-fi RPG. Fair?
I can see that.
Fair enough.
We will get more into Sharknado later, though, in a different segment.
Scott, what movies do you think should go?
I think the Fast and the Furious franchise really is in severe need of going. But another thing that I really want to go, I mean, of course, as I said, Fast and Furious.
Don't say it. Don't you?
Star Wars.
Ah.
Me and Star Wars don't hang. I've tried. Chris has even admitted that I have tried.
You have tried. I respect you for that. You have tried.
And it has failed me. But the beauty of film is it's subjective. And, part of me has a love-hate relationship with James Bond. I love James Bond. But what they're doing with Bond as of lately, where they're trying to turn it into an overly political correct mess and trying to make it a propaganda piece, is something that needs to end.
Were you trying to say something, Ben?
I have so many things to say, but first of all, I feel just for our viewers' sake, those of you who like Chris and I love Star Wars, to be honest, guys, sorry about that. Scott is the kind of person who would probably love the expanded universe. He would love the books.
Oh, absolutely. I think you would absolutely love the books.
I actually have read the books, and some of them are better. I love Admiral Thrawn. But
Shadows of the Empire is my favorite.
Shadows of the Empire is great. I also like Splinter of the Mind's Eye. I will give credit where credit's due. I do like Splinter of the Mind's Eye and Shadows of the Empire. The rest of it, I'm not all that fond of.
So he dislikes the new Star Wars. He enjoys the stuff that we have loved for years.
Which is basically the original 3.
Indeed.
I'm mostly giving credit to Empire Strikes Back. That is the one I will give credit to.
And then going into the whole James Bond thing, I'm very, very upset that they are taking my wonderful womanizer, completely macho, far as manly man as you can be in the 20s, and I heard a rumor they're trying to make him gay.
No, actually, right now they're working on Black Woman. James Bond is now in talks. What's her name? Chris. Can we get internet where we are? I want to say it's Lupita Nyong'o is in talks for James Bond. Idris Elba's been talked to, which I would be okay with.
And see, the thing
How do you spell that?
Lupita, I think, and then NY.
And see, this is can tie into something we can talk about later, how franchises are doing this the wrong way. Now, a new James Bond movie with a woman star, that would be great. Don't make her 007. Make her 008. Make her 006.
Yeah,
make her a
bring
different
a new
agent.
character.
Yeah, make her a different
Now,
character.
listen,
I agree.
This is staying on topic with the whole franchise thing, and we'll get to what I think franchises should go in just a sec. Now, speaking of Bond, listen, I didn't hate the idea of casting Idris.
I actually like the idea of Idris Elba.
I like the idea, but the main thing that bothers me, and it's not a racist thing, it's definitely not a racist thing, it's a continuity thing. They played that the Bond is the same person with the same story for, 30, 50 something years?
50 years.
50 years.
My grandfather has, I guess you would call them journal pages, of my great-grandfather talking about James Bond. This guy has been around for 4 generations. 5 if one of us had a kid.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, we get, obviously, it's Hollywood, and, time doesn't, seem to matter.
Well, I've actually seen some really interesting ways that people say that all of this actually could happen early on in Bond's career. But the best way to put it is, I don't like what they're doing. I'm okay with the casting like Idris Elba, but like you said, people are willing, and studios in particular, as of recently with Ghostbusters, are willing to plug you with the title of, if you don't like our casting, you're a racist or a sexist or a bigot. And that is called bullying, and I'm one of those people who won't have it.
Social terrorism.
Exactly. So by them saying that they've talked about Helen Mirren playing James Bond, or they've also talked about her playing the Doctor, that's another story for another time. But various actors saying like, oh, we need our next woman Bond.
Why?
That girl from Sin City, A Dame to Kill For. I always forget her name.
Why? I mean, and before fact checking, I mean, just why? Why change the formula? We've grown up and love Bond. They
want to say they're being politically correct.
We love the Sean Connery and the Roger Moore.
And you know what the real thing is? From my opinion, from what I've seen, I'm not in Hollywood. I'm very limited in what we do here.
Right.
They want to take these things that they know sell well and then change them rather than make something new that could fail. They want to make sure they can make money, they can continue what they want without coming up with any original ideas.
Be able to say that people went to see it because of that reason. They're selling it. Yes, with a franchise that we know. I'm going to say something very unpopular, but it has nothing to do with the actor. He's very talented. John Boyega in Star Wars and Daisy Ridley in Star Wars on Episode 7. They were saying that, oh yeah, most people say that movies with a minority and a woman lead cannot be successful, and Star Wars just made this huge success with Episode 7. No, I'm sorry. Sigourney Weaver did it in Aliens. I mean, the list goes on. I mean, G.I. Jane was a success. But
Whoopi, you're right, absolutely.
Whoopi and Sister Act.
Whoopi and Sister Act.
I'm watching that later today, actually. It's
and
going to be great.
Was a black woman, if we really want to go the PC race. The
Hold on. We're getting way off topic.
No. But this actually still, I'm going to rein it in.
Rein it in.
I'm reining it in. This is the overdoing that people have with franchises these days. Is they want to parade it around and use it. And that's where I say a franchise has potentially had enough. And that's why I'm reining it in.
We can get back to that. But, Chris, your turn. We've been so rude. What franchises do you think need to go away?
Just to move things along. Obviously, franchises that I want to end or see an end to, the Ice Age. I'm tired of Ice Age.
But Scrat, he's so adorable.
I don't care. What Ice Age are they on?
I don't like Ice Age.
This upcoming Ice Age will be Ice Age 5. I don't know where 4 went or came from, but 5 is all about Scrat. I'm super excited.
No, I actually heard a rumor the other day that Shrek's coming back.
God, no.
That needs to go. If you have seen Shrek the Musical, the franchise has died. Stop trying to revive it.
Shrek died at Shrek 3.
Hold on. If you watch Shrek the Musical on Netflix, nothing against the guy, but the guy who plays Donkey ruined the entire thing for me. He is as flamboyant as unicorns poop rainbows.
Fair enough.
Fair enough.
And that's nothing against that community. It's just he went. That's not Donkey. Donkey's Eddie Murphy. It's Eddie Murphy.
All right. Before we take a break here, let's tackle this this topic right here. What can Hollywood do to change maybe failing franchises?
Well, we kind of went over that already. If you take the idea, make a tangent that runs parallel, like again with Bond, if we make a new agent, Bond's doing his own thing while he's doing this. I don't mean go back and explain his old adventures. We understand what Bond does. We understand what he is there for. Maybe make a movie about his supporting agents or agents doing things around the world. So we all know.
Expand it.
Yeah, we all know. Like in Casino Royale, what Bond was doing was important, yes. But we know there are equally important things that other agents were doing at the exact same time that if they hadn't done, Bond would have lost. At the same time, if Bond hadn't done what he'd done, they would have lost.
I wanna take that and say, do you remember the video game GoldenEye Rogue Agent?
I was about to bring that up.
I was going to say, that is a perfect example. That stood on its own, but it was in the James Bond universe, and you knew it was.
Or if we even want to jump over to video games really quick, Halo 5, Guardians. You see the story from 2 different viewpoints, and if you watch both those stories, both those could have been amazing movies.
And it's not taking that much of a risk. You still have Bond there, obviously, but you also show more of the side characters and what they're doing, what is important. I like that. I totally get that.
Yeah, and the worst case is if you have a movie that flops, you're going to create a new great supporting character that will add flavor to the franchise that is kind of dying away.
Exactly, which is I think what they tried to do with Moneypenny and the newer ones, but not so much.
They also tried to do it with Shia LaBeouf in Indiana Jones.
Oh, that's speaking of indie. Speaking of franchises that are, I actually wrote this down. What franchises that haven't been gone for about maybe 5, 10, 15 years that you want to see come back? Starting with Scott.
Rambo needs another one.
Do you really think so?
Yes, because they developed a crossover that I've always wanted to talk about, and I'm geeking out right now because they were going to make, and I can't make this up, Rambo versus the Predator. And that was going to be a movie. And Sylvester Stallone was on board.
So that means that somewhere in the universe, Arnold Schwarzenegger's character from Predator exists.
Yes, and Rambo exists in the Predator universe.
Ben, your thoughts?
Well, in regards to Rambo, again, I've only seen bits and clips, and Rambo is just the crazy man.
I have never seen a full Rambo movie.
Oh my God, you guys are missing out.
But basically, Rambo is, like I said, with James Bond, manly man of the 20s, Rambo's the manly man of the 70s in Vietnam. That's what I see. But in my opinion, movies that should have a good franchise bring back, and I'm so excited because it's actually happening, Power Rangers,
Yes.
2017.
Yes, Ben, I'm with you on that one 100%.
And they're starting from scratch, or I hope they somehow loop it, or because in the continuity Zordon's dead, but we can get into that to another podcast. The other thing I think would be really funny is if, let's face it, with what he's doing now, Adam Sandler's kind of doing what he can. If he got some good writers sitting down and his friends, and I mean his close friends, everyone who was in Grown Ups, everybody who was in Happy Gilmore, bring Bob Barker back, I don't know. But if we can get everyone pulled together and create a universe that merges all of Adam Sandler's movies, I think that would be hilarious.
I think it could be ballsy, but it could work.
I think it would work because it's been probably better because you bring back old characters that everyone loves and grew up with versus what he's done in the last 10 years, which is, nothing notable really.
Hold on, look at him on Netflix. Netflix bought up his contract, and everything he's doing now is stuff he's wanted to do that Hollywood said no. So it's pretty interesting.
I haven't watched any of his stuff on Netflix. Is it actually any good?
It is. I watched part of it with my baby brother, and let's face it, he has Netflix quality, but he has the free reign to do whatever he wants.
His newest with David Spade, what was that called?
It's on the tip of my tongue. I cannot think of it.
Well, you guys probably know. You can search it on Netflix. I've only seen bits and pieces of it. Really funny, really good. It kind of reminds me of the old Adam Sandler movies, honestly.
Back in the 90s when
Back
no
in
one
the
was
90s.
politically correct.
Exactly. And I think the problem with Adam Sandler is, and you could stay on top of the franchises, they need to come back, is that I think that ever since he became big enough, he became the creative control.
He's a symbol.
He's a symbol. Exactly. I think he needs to be put back under control by someone else in order to, show him like how he can be. Because you don't need to talk like, yeah, you know.
Yeah, but it's just an idea. But yeah, those are my two thoughts. The only other thing I could possibly think of is if we are just talking about franchises in general, I would love to see How I Met Your Mother movie. I'd love to see a Friends movie. Just franchises other than the ones we've been talking about that could benefit from a good movie.
I'm now that we had the really good American reboot of Godzilla, I would really like to see them try and take a crack at Gamera.
Debatable.
Oh, we could talk about that for
We're
hours.
not going to. This is not movie fights. We'll get to that one day, Scott.
We will. We've been working on it for a long time.
Another franchise you want to see come back, Scott?
Yeah, as I said, I want to see Gamera come back. But it would be a ballsy decision, but I think we could do it.
You can't really do that, though, because like I was saying much earlier, the Japanese control that franchise in such a way that they've balanced the storylines to keep flowing. In my opinion, Hollywood would just muck that up.
But at the same time, if as Toho has said, the American Godzilla is not in the same continuity as the Japanese one.
Well, let me just say this then, that I was just thinking about this, and I figured out the issue that the three of us may have with continuities and with franchises, and why I love the Japanese ones so much. Japanese creators stay with their creation until the day they die.
That is true.
Whereas American franchises, we go through directors and writers like they're candy.
Yeah. Another franchise I want to see come back. This is the one that I have to say is personal. Firefly.
It'll never come back. I love it.
Don't you dare.
I love it.
Don't you speak that evil. It is coming back. Hallelujah.
They've had talks, and a few of the actors refused to come back just because Fox made them so upset.
Yes, but now it's property of Universal as long as they call it Serenity.
All right, Scott, tone it down. Let's push things along. I know.
It's coming back.
I know.
All right, Chris. What do you want to see?
So it's already happened technically because I'm happy as.
well, then you can't bring it up. That's not
I'm
the
just,
topic.
I'm just honorable mention. Star Wars came back, and I'm super happy they're going in a real good direction. I feel with anything that is outside the episodes.
You disagree with your own opinion from launch day, but that's beside the point. We'll get back to that later. I have to say I disagree. I don't think it's going in the right direction.
I think it is, Ben.
The moment Princess Leia became a Disney princess, she was no longer a Star Wars princess. The Leia I love no longer exists.
I think you meet General Organa now.
I'm going to beat you with my microphone stand.
Okay, moving on. Franchise I want to see come back. Also, I was kind of semi-joking with Star Wars.
Spyro.
Spyro the Dragon.
I'm sorry.
We're not talking about video games.
He's wearing a PlayStation shirt.
I am. I'm repping my PlayStation shirt. There's a PlayStation right behind you, right there.
So Spyro is a very
Listen,
honest topic.
if I could, just for a sidebar, video games, Crash Bandicoot, Spyro the Dragon.
Gex.
I'm getting the cue for commercial break. Hang on, we'll be right back after this. Hey, Ben, you remember Bro Code, don't you?
Barely.
Barely, yeah. So Bro Code is a series we started maybe, 4 years ago?
I don't know.
Yeah, you
Oh, no, I'm 24 now. It's got to be at least 5 years now.
Oh, man, has it been that long? So we've done 3 Bro Codes so far. Bro Code Dual Status was the third one. The first one was Bro Code Shootout, and then there was Bro Code Free For All. Without Ben, unfortunately. He was away at college.
Education's important, kids.
And it is what I kind of like to call our Impulse franchise. It's kind of one of those ones where I go, hey, you want to make some? Like you said.
Yeah, it's a lot like one of our warm-up franchises. We'll do it just to get back in the swing of seeing each other again. Because like Chris was saying, I'm away at school, or I was a lot, and we need to get back into the feel of filming with Scott and each other. And this is what we like to do before.
Yeah, Bro Code is one of those things that we could just come back to, film it pretty much in under 3 hours, and have it out the week later. So the first story is that I ask Ben's character if I can go out with this girl, and that breaks the Bro Code, and then so we have to, take out our guns and be American all about it.
I want to establish these are also all extremely loosely based off of real events in our lives.
Indeed.
Indeed. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back. We're partying here at the studio. As Scott is reaching into his bag of McDonald's, getting some fries.
Sponsored by Not McDonald's.
Sponsored by Not McDonald's.
No comment.
No comment. Thank you, Ben. So we tackled franchises, ones we don't like, ones we like, ones that we think that need to go on, and so on and so forth. So I want to kind of change it up and segue into something kind of off topic a little bit, but not so much. Franchises usually get rebooted from time to time, either rebooted or just remade in general. What are some notable reboots, Scott?
I think the most notable reboot is probably the 2009 Star Trek reboot.
False.
Ben, go ahead.
I'm going to let Scott go ahead and get my opinion in, but I want to hear more about the Star Trek stuff. I just want to voice my opinion before you go onto your excellent interpretation of franchises that have been rebooted.
No, what's your...
Talk about Star Trek. What was so great about Star Trek?
I like the idea that it was a sequel to all the other Star Treks, but yet it continued the original franchise through time travel and then an alternate reality. It is something Terminator Genisys tried and failed.
And see, in my opinion, the best franchise that has been rebooted, because it is so classically rebooted, would be Batman. Now, don't get me wrong, Man of Steel, the Dark Knight series, but the history of Batman going from a TV show to movie after movie after movie since we've been children was really nice for the franchise. And let me just say, the biggest part about that is because they had absolutely no continuity of each other. Let me just say the Batman franchise has kind of dropped off since we started making sequels of the same movie that don't match up with movies we're making now. Dark Knight should have been Man of Steel.
Right.
I strongly agree with what you're saying. Batman is actually a really strong one.
Let me just say my favorite Batman was George Clooney. Those nipples.
Now it's funny you said that because I said this in the last podcast we did a while ago, Scott. That for nostalgic reasons, because I was a kid, I was 6-year-old when it came out. I like Batman and Robin. I understand why everyone hates it. I totally get it, more than anyone else probably, but I enjoy it.
But then because we were little when that one came out, have you seen the one with Jim Carrey as the Riddler?
Absolutely.
You're just confused. It's a different Batman movie, and that's what made Batman survive.
Well, I think
so
because
long.
after Tim Burton kind of dropped the ball with Batman Returns and went way too dark.
I like Batman Returns.
It was way too dark, and
It was way too dark, and it wasn't Batman. But at the same time, it was the Nightmare Before Christmas Batman crossover that people could want.
Well, if we want to tie into Batman, let's go to Superman real quick. I think the reason the Superman franchise has lasted so long is that their continuity of the 3 Superman movies of the 80s didn't get remade until 20 years later. They gave this idea of Superman time to settle, let the comic books create a new image of Superman, and then bring Superman movies back.
but when they did Superman Returns,
Okay.
Again, darkness thing, I said it earlier, it was just overplayed. Going on.
Darkness was overplayed, but I will say I prefer Superman Returns to Man of Steel.
I absolutely agree.
I think that it was a powerful story about love and realizing that you've left a life for so long that you come back and it's not always waiting for you.
Well, that ties into the entire issue that these franchises have is the comic books. Yes, they have these slow dips like Man of Steel that show important storylines that you cannot forget, but when you put it into movie form, it's a flop. And nobody wants to continue after a flop, even though things that are coming, like the most recent releases, even just a year ago when, spoilers everybody, the DC villains created utopias. That's an amazing story.
The Lex Luthor one in particular.
But the movies are nowhere near that, and all the lull and romance and stuff about their lives that's so important before then won't make a good movie.
It's because the comic books have had so long to gestate, and comic books are able to tell small stories in between their big stories.
Yeah, that's the big thing. I mean, Man of Steel was the portion of Batman v Superman where there was just this tension for years. You can't put that into a movie. That's more of a...
You hear that, Zack Snyder? You cannot do that.
It's like the Star Wars openers. If Star Wars was a comic, those long openers would have been years of comic book stuff.
Absolutely.
But they opened it with just text.
Well, they're releasing new books here and there to actually fill all that 30-year gap up. So
yeah, but it's the franchises, and I think we were going to tie in this later, but I'm going to bring it up now. The issue with the franchises now is they don't allow other mediums to come in and explain the boring stuff that movies just can't cope with.
And create like a mix of universe, like how Doctor Who has the TV show, but they also have the books and the comic books.
And the movies.
That they consider canon. And so you get these other smaller stories that tie in between episodes. Which most franchises, particularly in America, they don't really allow much to breathe.
And I absolutely agree. And kind of staying with the reboots, and we were talking about Superman and how Man of Steel, and we prefer Superman Returns over Man of Steel for the most part. You have to admit, there were some good parts of Man of Steel. I thought all the action scenes were very well filmed. Zack Snyder is an amazing visual effects director.
Yes.
But he cannot direct a story.
In my opinion, Man of Steel would have been much better served if there was, I don't know, like with, you guys remember Lego Bionicle?
Yeah.
Yep.
The Bionicle movie had comics and hype before the movie came out explaining what happened beforehand. I feel Man of Steel would have been better served if there was some sort of event.
See, the thing is, I feel like Man of Steel could have been better if it was a continuation of Superman Returns, like in that same universe, rather than a reboot. Because my main problem with Man of Steel is, Scott, I've told you this before.
The No John Williams.
The No John Williams soundtrack. There's nothing there to get you excited about being like seeing Superman or feeling that how Superman is actually doing. And I feel like that was the music was a huge just dwelling throughout the whole film. Go ahead, Ben.
And see, from the other end, in my opinion, it would have been much better for the entire last third of Man of Steel to be the first third of Justice League. It would have fit perfectly.
Oh, absolutely. Instead, did they know they were going to do the whole?
Yes, they
No.
already knew.
They knew, but they didn't know. If Man of Steel had flopped much more than it had, I really doubt we'd be seeing the Justice League movie in the next few years.
I think they would have scrapped it, probably waited about 8 years, and then rebooted it again.
But even then, they would have opened with the Batman v Superman fight.
Yeah.
So-
But I want to say with Man of Steel, what I think, because you guys both chimed in what you think could have improved, I want to say what I think could have been improved. When I walked into Man of Steel, what I was hoping for was a dynamic story with believable characters. I didn't get believable characters in Man of Steel. I got cartoon characters, which, yes, Superman cartoon, Batman the Animated Series are probably some of the most definitive animations and storytelling I've heard it for comic books.
To clarify, he's talking about the animated series from the 90s, not
Yes.
2000.
No, God, no.
Correct.
The real one with Kevin Conroy.
The real ones.
Yeah. I didn't get believable characters, and when I knew I didn't get believable characters was the moment that Lois Lane walks in and she mentioned something about a character pissing, and then she's normally like under a sniper scope or something like that. She's not truly doing her job if she's not under a sniper scope.
I'd absolutely agree.
Where she's kind of just like, I haven't truly done my job if I'm not under a sniper scope. That's where I'm sitting there. I'm like, you're not a believable character. And
But that is Lois Lane. That's her character.
It would
But
intercut with these
right,
base
I agree.
explosions.
It was wrong direction. She was given the wrong direction, absolutely. And
All
the
of
same
them
thing.
were.
Yeah, Henry Cavill was. I think he's a great Superman. I think he plays a great Superman. Listen, hear me out. Hear me out. He has the ability to be a great Superman. The acting's there. He's Clark Kent. I just think that he's not given the right direction. He has the voice down. He has looks. He has the quirks. He has everything down. You gotta stop doing that.
Which, also, with Henry Cavill, I have to say, the DC universe really needs to be fixed in the sense that the big problem...
We're getting off topic. Again, this is not DC talk. Well, Ben.
I can rein it in a little bit to get back to our topic of what's going on with all the franchises. And I feel that the kind of central theme we got going on here is that the franchises are not in their appropriate medium. Marvel, great thing they're doing. They have their universe across all their movies. It is golden. DC got in too late. They would have been better as a TV series.
I agree. Which, for the most part, they're actually still good at TV series. Flash is doing good. Arrow's doing good. I don't know about Supergirl.
Gotham is bombing hardcore.
Is it right now? I thought it was doing good.
Gotham's not piece. It's not canon.
It's not a part of the universe, but it's bombing. But in terms of DC property, I hate the show The Flash.
Okay.
I hate it.
Again, this is not DC talk. This is not on topic of franchises because Flash has barely had a franchise to even begin with. That was close. Almost just dropped my pen on the ground and made a messy noise. What was I gonna segue into?
Were we going to talk about how do you know when a franchise has had enough too?
We'll get to that in the next minute, but I want to, before we get off comic book talk, apparently, with franchises, do you think the Spider-Man is finally in good hands being back under Marvel with negotiations with Sony?
No.
I don't know yet because we have seen maybe 6 minutes of screen time of Spider-Man. I cannot personally vouch because we've not really seen Spider-Man yet.
Okay.
We saw a cameo.
We haven't seen Peter Parker yet that much either.
The biggest issue I'm having with the whole Spider-Man thing is if anyone is, again, I'm going to segue towards comic books, but if you're familiar with how the Spider-Verse works, technically every Spider-Man that they've made is canon, even in the Marvel Universe they have now.
Well, it's because they had the Ultimate Universe, which they scrapped finally. I never liked the Ultimate Universe.
I liked it until they did some stuff with Spider-Man and they completely botched it.
But like they've always had two separate universes, and then for some reason they fought it out for some other reason, and then now they're back to these good old school Marvel universe.
Yeah, the biggest issue that they're going to be having is the universes they've created if they play their cards right, are still canon, while at the same time, I don't know. It's a very complicated situation where if they don't appease the viewers, they're going to flop. But at the same time, if they appease the viewers, like we were saying with Batman v Superman, it's going to cause some instances where it is not movie good.
Yeah, and I also want to go on record and say, because this is also going to apply to me in a different way, I'm sorry, everybody who keeps wanting to try and bring this up and pretend like it's going to happen. You are not going to see a Miles Morales Spider-Man movie. It's not going to happen. As much as Miguel O'Hara Spider-Man is not going to happen much as I want it to.
See, I
don't want Miles Morales.
At least not at this time. Okay, yeah, I like that idea. But like, I want to see before we even get to Miles, whatever his name is, Morales. I want to see it adapted on the film because I love the series of the comics that came out. The clonage, Ben Reilly, Scarlet Spider, that whole thing that could be really interesting on screen. And I think if they play the cards right, they could probably do everything from Spectacular Spider-Man to Amazing Spider-Man to Peter Parker Spider-Man. And I hope because they finally have what they do. They have a young guy, Peter Parker, who could be doing it for 20 years from now because the most current Spider-Man is like in his 40s now, so that's awesome. He's a teacher.
And the biggest issue with these franchises, and why we were talking about earlier, why they're kind of overplayed, is they don't have the medium needed to explore all these options and will end up always going for money, what people want at the current time. Case in point, Spider-Man right now, best friends with Deadpool, doing stuff with Deadpool, but Hollywood Spider-Man is probably going to end up a lesbian minority woman just to follow what Hollywood wants.
And every Hollywood movie has to go bigger and bigger with every single turn. I'm not going to crap on Hollywood because they've done some great things. But the Spider-Man movies are a bit formulaic. You're going to end up with Spider-Man fighting, losing in the second act, going to the third one on a top of a high building, losing his mask, fighting in the third act, and then somehow a character's going to fall off a building and die after he reconciles with Peter Parker.
This is some good stuff. I like this. But we should save this for, again, another time. And Scott, what did you want to talk about?
How much is too much with a franchise? Because there's a lot of franchises, whether you like them or don't like them, it's too much sometimes. We got to say no.
So, yeah, getting away from comic books, because I think we've kind of overplayed that today
Just a
already.
little bit. Just
a wee bit. That's just what we know. We're comic book kids. But moving on to other things, if I want to go to Fast and the Furious, for example, I loved Fast. I loved Fast 2 Furious. I love Fast, whatever catchy thing they put 3.
Tokyo Drift?
No, not Tokyo Drift. No, one after that. Tokyo Drift was good, too.
It was just the Fast and Furious.
The Fast and Furious.
And then there was Fast 5.
At a point where you have become GTA 5, stop making movies. The one in Brazil where they steal the safe, you didn't need to make that a Fast movie. You could have made that a Fast Cars movie.
So it's interesting. I'm going to ask you both this question, and you both can answer together or separately. We all love Men in Black, right?
Yep.
You probably know where I'm going with this.
Yep.
Will Smith, I love you.
Right? That guy does not age. Do you guys do you like go ahead, just say your opinion, Scott.
The Men in Black 21 Jump Street crossover is horrible.
What are you talking about?
Have you not heard about this?
They
No.
confirmed the 21 Jump Street Men in Black crossover, and I believe it's called MIB 23 is the official title, coming out next year.
Okay, so let me. I have so many thoughts now. 21 Jump Street, 22 Jump Street, hilarious. Loved them. They were great. Men in Black 1, classic. It's what, 15 years old now.
It's probably more than that.
It has
a raw reaction.
It has to be a classic. This is a raw reaction. I haven't heard this before. Oh my goodness gracious. Men in Black 2, didn't care for it. I thought it was a little tacky, a little overplayed. Men in Black 3 pulled at my heartstrings.
Oh.
It was the great sequel, prequel, explaining stuff movie.
Yeah.
Let me say this. The history of 21 Jump Street and Men in Black, while separate, the combining of them, while it terrifies me, I will applaud Hollywood for A, creating something more or less original, because these two things should have never come together, and B, pardon me, I had to do that. The most important thing that is actually making me excited about this is it reflects what we do here. This was probably, and I'm not saying people in Hollywood do illegal things, but everybody in Hollywood is probably coked out of their minds and high off their butts going, we should do this. And they went, yes. And one person had enough money to go ahead and do it.
It's not that these things shouldn't cross over. It's if we want them to cross over. Now, listen, I don't know any of the casting details. It's
still the same cast from both, from what I've
so
heard.
Tommy Lee Jones and
Tommy
Will Smith.
can't do it.
Tommy cannot do that. Now, okay, before we continue, this is I'm opening the open. There's no one at a time. You just feel free to pitch in as soon as you feel like you need to. As soon as I ask this, or state my statement. Now, these are two different types of films entirely. Comedy, not the same. Action, not the same. Universe, not the same at all. Now, if you were directing this, Scott, I'm directing this to you before we open it up. How would you go about doing this?
Okay, so obviously they are radically different universes. Now, I have taken a crack at combining two franchises that should never combine, and it didn't work, but I have my reasons, but that's beside the point. So what I'm going to do...
We're both looking at him in very, very poor ways right now.
Yes, Electrosick 4 did happen, and I'm sorry, but...
Deleted off YouTube.
Continue.
But if I were directing MIB 23, here's what I have to say. You start out with a normal 21 Jump Street opening. They're doing something. They encounter something kind of weird. They go for it. Now, this isn't out of the realm of possibility. We then cut to Men in Black. They're in a separate universe. And there is some alien that they're pursuing that has a dimensional portal type opening.
Makes sense. Technically, they've done that before, so go ahead.
Yeah, you do an alternate timeline portal where they somehow end in an alternate Earth where the Men in Black do not exist. So it is them having to be the Men in Black without being the Men in Black, which could be some very incidental comedy.
Ben, go ahead.
Well, see, I think that's a great idea. I hadn't thought of that. But what I was thinking in my 5 Bud Light deep stupor is, I mean, think about 22 Jump Street, the portion when they're driving along the freeway and like, oh, God, an explosion. Oh, no, it exploded. Nothing happened. Ah, the chickens. And the chickens exploded. I feel if they crossed over the right way, it could literally be two movies that interlap like a zipper. That their small parts play a part in the other movie. Kind of like, have you guys played Quantum Break yet?
Yes, I have.
Much like Quantum Break, if you guys haven't played, close your ears now, where...
Spoilers.
You play both the good guy and the bad guy, and each one of your choices affects how the other one's going to react. Like, think about 22 Jump Street. If the chicken exploding was actually Will Smith misfiring his grasshopper, that would be hilarious, but not infringe on the story.
So what you're saying is that they're there, but they don't actually interact with each other.
Exactly. It's much like when we were kids. We were all Power Rangers, but for some reason, Pokemon were there too. Just a thing where they're present with each other, but they aren't central to their own story.
See, I can see both of your scenarios working actually really well, probably better than I can see Hollywood actually doing it.
Hollywood's going to screw it up.
Unfortunately, probably. And here's where I open up free movie fight battle. Here we go. Scott, predictions.
MIB 23 is going to be universally panned until it's released. There's going to be some early reviews that say it's actually not as bad as you thought. People are going to go and watch it and say it's okay. And then when you look back on it a couple years later, you're going to say that was kind of dumb.
Ben?
I think it's going to be a little Warcraft meet Sharknado. Critics are going to just take a big one on it and just make it sound like the worst movie that has ever been made.
But critics have praised both franchises.
I know. But that's after the fact. The initial idea is going to be this is the worst thing you could ever subject your eyeballs to. And what I think will actually end up happening is this movie will become a cult classic. It'll be like Rocky Horror. Because either Scott's Way or my way, it'll become something that has not been done recently.
We don't know until it comes out, Scott. I mean,
I'm aware.
We can't. You're a critic. You should know this.
I am a critic.
Plug your channel.
MP27 Reviews. I do reviews.
Thank you. That was such a
My best way to put it. I do the reviews.
Chris and I have had guest spots on one of his reviews.
You guys.
A couple
had
of them,
guest
actually.
spots.
Couple.
Chris has had a couple. Ben had one. He was supposed to be in more, but
You actually promised a YouTube channel that you never went through with.
Okay, everybody. Here's the thing. I did make a YouTube channel. Just a plug for my YouTube channel. At the time, I was still in school, so I found that most of my channels, being as I was living with my current ex-girlfriend, they were very school-related.
I like how you said current ex.
Yes, they were very school-related. So unless you want to know how to figure out the isometric bonds of organic chemistry, don't watch my channel. I'll make a new one, I promise.
We'll hold you to that. I know we've kind of been all over the place with this podcast, and I'm trying to stay on track. We were last talking about reboots until we jump into what Ben didn't know was MIB 23. Now, before we wrap things up, we got a few minutes here. What are some reboots that you see coming in the future that you don't want to see? Like-
George of the Jungle.
oh god, don't do that to me. I'm gonna do a number on you, Inspector Gadget.
Oh.
Dare you?
All right, see, I like both films.
Inspector
I liked
Gadget,
both
and you
films.
know it's gonna be starring somebody that
But-
you hate,
but see, these
like
were-
Taylor Lautner.
But see, these were both movies that were amazing and then had a really crappy sequel.
Yes, both of them technically did. The first one had, I'm sorry, talking about Inspector Gadget, had
The guy who played
Fewest Bueller's Day Off, dude.
He played Harry from Third Rock from the Sun.
Couple months ago, when you said reboots that I don't want to have happen but will, Tarzan, and it did happen, and
Is it good? Okay.
no.
I will give my opinion after I watch
Now,
the
hold on.
movie.
Before we get to that, reboots technically, we're talking about remakes. Beauty and the Beast, your thoughts?
I like the idea because A, Emma Watson's on my list.
Yeah.
And B, while it is a remake, A, it can't be any worse than that remake they did with Mary-Kate Olsen. And B, if you've seen the actual opening trailer they made, it is verbatim the trailer Disney made back in the 70s.
I caught that too.
I will open up my opinion on this. I am interested to see it. I'm not excited to see it. I love Beauty and the Beast. It's one of my favorite Disney movies. But what I will say is this. Their Cinderella live-action reboot sucked.
Boo.
And they haven't had the best track with a lot of their Disney live-action reboots. Granted, Jungle Book was actually surprisingly good.
I enjoyed Jungle Book.
That, with the visual effects department, is, I think, the same one that's doing Beauty and the Beast. So if they can do Beast well, I have a little bit of faith in this one.
Well, see, what comes with these remakes is they aren't remakes for our time. I'm using air quotes here, people. They're remakes that are holding back to the original stories. The biggest issue that remakes really have is they try to tailor it to the original people.
So let's
This one's making it for new people.
let's clarify, because we're using both words like crazy. Scott, separate the two terms of reboot and remake.
Okay, a reboot is... It's a real fine line, but a reboot is reimagining a franchise to go on forward. A remake is taking a story verbatim and then continuing on that. Just literally making the original movie, not a new story with those characters.
So to clarify, the whole Two-Face, Joker, the death of Batman's girlfriend, that was a remake. Man of Steel was a reboot. The remake had its own ideas, had its own story, whereas the reboot, while a flop as a movie, followed the comic books and the story that we know and love from DC. Sorry for using the comic book reference
Dark
again.
Knight is more of a reboot, though. Man of Steel and Dark Knight. Hollywood has taken an approach that almost everything is a reboot now, not a remake. Which is why even the RoboCop reboot is not a remake, because they changed the story. And that is where things like, direct remake are the real tricky line. They don't really exist anymore.
Another great example of TV from the 90s. Heck yeah. Smallville, Superman remake.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, I actually disagree with that. Thinking about it.
Near the end with the witches, remake.
Not really, though. It's a reboot because they reimagined it. It had its own independent story. A remake is more like, let the right one in and let me in.
I'm sorry. Smallville, I'm only thinking about the whole fact that he didn't choose Lois Lane. That's the biggest thing that's different from the main story.
Oh, boy.
Which would make it a reboot.
Again, moving away from comic books.
Yes, we seem to be obsessed with comic books, apparently. And you know what, guys?
Well, here's
Nope.
No,
Nope.
it's not comic book
He
related.
has Mario.
I have Mario. We're
It's
past.
not comic book related.
He has Mario.
Make it quick, Scott.
Okay. 12 Angry Men, the original classic, one of my favorite films of all time. 12 Angry Men, the remake, with Tony Danza, incidentally, is the same story told again. Batman, the Michael Keaton one, is its own independent story, reimagined in a same characters, different world, different everything. Batman Begins. That's a reboot.
Indeed, indeed, indeed. I wish we had more time, guys, but we are out of time. So I want to thank Scott and Ben for being here. Scott, do you have anything project-wise coming up?
I've been doing some political campaign commercials. Chris will probably plug them eventually in the near future. Other than that, wrapping up Holmes University 4. Got some stuff in pre-production, though.
Indeed, and I've seen some early footage, and it's looking really good. I think
And
it's gonna
expect a trailer soon.
Ooh, I like that. I like that. Ben, what do you got going on?
Nothing much. Trying to get my life in order after school. Keep an eye out. If I get enough comments in Chris's comment section here, I might actually try to remake my YouTube channel.
Hey.
Also starting up my blog. Everything I write is usually run by Scott. I'm trying to write a couple books and write a couple of his screenplays. So if you want a preview into what Scott might be doing, comment in Chris's section here. I'll start up my blog.
Yes, please like, subscribe, all that good stuff, comments. Hey, it actually helps out. And you know what? If you make us there, we'll get. I don't know what the tagline. I lost the tagline.
You'll make things more awesome.
Yeah.
The more support we get.
Indeed, we can't be awesome without your support.
That's exactly right. Hey, on the show, we say whatever we want to say. That's an old tagline from an old show called The Garage Show back in the day.
Isn't that right, guys, gals, and everything in between?
Hell yeah!
What do we become?
Ben can't say his tagline because it would make this R-rated.
If you want to know my tagline, join my channel.
And watch Unstoppable Blue Fury.
Don't do that, please.
Actually, don't do that. It's what my coworkers do at my day job while they're drunk.
know,
life.
Truth be told, I've been happy to have you guys here. Thank you for coming. It's nice to chat with all you guys in the same room again. It's been a long time coming. And
it's kind of like an Avengers of real life.
It is.
If you don't believe us, everything here is actually not scripted.
Good times. We actually have a few minutes actually to kill. So if we want to talk about whatever we want to talk about.
Chris, actually, sorry, Ben. I end up doing this a lot.
No. I know you do this a lot. I've listened to the other podcasts. I just want to say something. I think Chris should have the last word. I want to hear what Chris has to say. We've been interrupting and overplaying him all night. I want to know your opinion.
We got like a solid minute before I have to wrap things up technically. So whatever you want to talk about, Scott.
I just wanted to say I wanted to add like an annotation, like an epilogue video, because there's a new type of franchise on the horizon that I think is going to become popular again, and I want to talk about it with you guys as like fresh eyes.
Go ahead, 30 seconds. What is it?
Well, it's anthology franchises.
We will go over that
and
next podcast.
That's why I want it to be like
Okay.
I want it to be like a 5-minute segment, just like an epilogue, because it is something I do want to discuss.
All right. Well, we still have 45 seconds to kill.
Well, I just want to say before we sign off that we've been focusing a lot on the American stuff. I know in the beginning I was mentioning some of the Japanese stuff.
Yeah. Go ahead, do your thing real quick.
Basically, real quick, it just comes down to the fact that the American ones, they reboot, they want money, yada, 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 everything we've been talking about. The Japanese stuff, it's basically Whoever creates it is with it until the day they die. Naruto, personal one that I love to death. Lots of movies, lots of stuff that's going on a lot. They just handed off the reins of Naruto to his son, Baruto, gave it a new writer, and it is flopping hard. So I guess my entire thing is, guess what? Franchises work because you give it to the original person. Case in point, Stan Lee in every Marvel thing ever. Guess what? That's why the franchise is surviving.
He has a point. It's you can't say the same thing about George Lucas though.
Yeah.
He sold out.
Did he, or did he buy in?
No, he didn't. He
bought
just
in.
had nobody like talking to him about everything. It was just him in his own world.
He sold all creative rights to Disney. He sold out.
I've had
Star
some
Wars is
ideas.
dead.
See, you say he sold out. I think he bought in.
Okay, Five-Finger Death Punch.
Listen, I like Star Wars. You like Star Wars. Scott is biased against Star Wars.
It's not biased because I've honestly given it a shot, and you, as you said earlier in this podcast, you vouch for that I've given it an honest shot.
All right, hey.
So it's more that just it's not for me.
You know, I'm going to sit you down. We're all going to sit down one day and watch Star Wars, the original 3 over again. We'll see if your opinion changes. Because when's the last time you've seen Star Wars?
Oh, I don't know.
It's been a long time.
Years
It's
ago.
been years. I know Empire Strikes Back is your favorite. It's my favorite too. Don't worry. But as we wrap things up here, once again, I wanted to thank Scott Acord and Benjamin Lord, 2 kings on top of the YouTube mountain. Not really, but we'll get there one day.
We're trying.
Our very, very best.
And hey, maybe a new bro code coming in. You never know. We'll see
if we get 100 likes,
if we get. Well, that's pushing it, Ben.
it'll happen the
We're
day
pushing it.
after.
We're pushing it. Thank you for joining us here on GS Talks. And hey, I'm glad you had a good one. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.